The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council headquarters glittered like a diamond against the purple sky of Nexus Prime. Inside, representatives from over 300 species gathered for the monthly assembly. Today was special. Today, humans would officially join as observers. Ambassador Eric Russell took a deep breath as he adjusted his tie for the 5th time. After decades of careful negotiations with individual alien species, humanity had finally earned a seat at the bigger table. Not a voting seat yet, but it was progress. "Stop fidgeting, sir," said Lisa Wright from his left side. She wore a simple black suit that matched her partner Sam Miller's outfit. Both former Special Forces operators, they stood slightly behind Eric, their eyes constantly scanning the alien-filled hall. "Can you blame me? First human delegation to the full council. If I mess this up, Earth will never let me forget it," Eric said. Sam's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "You'll do fine, sir. We've practiced the protocols for months." Eric nodded. The three of them had indeed spent countless hours learning the complex greeting rituals of dozens of species. Some found eye contact aggressive. Others considered it rude not to show all your teeth. One amphibian species required visitors to lightly spray themselves with water before speaking, to show respect for moisture. "Remember, we speak only when spoken to." During the first session, Eric reminded himself aloud. A bell-like sound echoed through the chamber. The various conversations in hundreds of languages quieted as the council head, a tall blue-skinned being called Navara, floated to the central platform. "The 4,927th Assembly of the Galactic Council begins," Navara announced, her voice somehow reaching every corner without seeming loud. "Today, we welcome observers from Sol System, the humans." Every eye, visual sensor, and sensory appendage turned toward Eric and his team. He felt sweat forming on his forehead, but kept his diplomatic smile firmly in place. "Ambassador Russell, please approach the circle of introduction," Navara said. Eric walked forward, conscious of Wright and Miller following exactly 3 steps behind him. This had caused some confusion during pre-arrival communications. Council security protocols were clear that no weapons were allowed in the chamber, and they couldn't understand why humans insisted on bringing guards who carried no weapons. Why not rely on council security like other species? The security chief had asked. Or bring defensive technology. Eric had simply smiled and said it was human diplomatic tradition. After much debate, the council had reluctantly agreed to allow Wright and Miller to accompany him, having confirmed through multiple scans that they carried no weapons. As Eric reached the glowing circle on the floor, a tall insectoid being approached him. Senior Diplomat Zorish of the Z Catharian Collective, one of the oldest council members. "Welcome, human," Zorish said, mandibles clicking in what Eric had learned was a formal greeting pattern. "The council acknowledges Earth's growing place among spacefaring civilizations." "Thank you, Senior Diplomat," Eric replied with a small bow, the exact depth his cultural advisors had recommended. "Earth is honored to join this assembly of great civilizations." Zorish's compound eyes studied Eric for a moment before shifting to look at Wright and Miller, who stood perfectly still, their faces professionally neutral. "I must confess curiosity," Zorish said, lowering his voice. "Most species either trust council security or bring defensive technology. Yet you humans bring these guards without weapons. Our scans confirm they carry nothing that could be classified as a weapon under council definitions." Eric maintained his diplomatic smile. "As I explained to your security team, it's simply our way. A human tradition dating back centuries. Yet, they move like predators," Zorish observed. "Their eyes never stop scanning. They position themselves to maximize visual coverage. Most curious." "We value tradition," Eric said simply. Zorish's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. The ZK Therian Collective has existed for 20,000 of your years. Human. We understand tradition, but we also understand that traditions have reasons. He leaned closer. Perhaps someday you will share the true reason. Before Eric could respond, a melodic chime sounded, indicating it was time to take seats. We will speak more in the coming days, Zarish said, moving away with surprising grace for his large form. Eric returned to his team, and they made their way to the seating area assigned to Earth. The seats were designed to accommodate various body shapes and automatically adjusted as Eric sat down. Making friends already? Wright asked quietly. Just typical first contact curiosity, Eric replied, though he knew it was more than that. The council species were puzzled by humans, and their unarmed guards most of all. The formal proceedings began. For the next 3 hours, Eric listened attentively as various representatives discussed trade routes, territorial disputes, and scientific discoveries. Occasionally, he made notes on his datapad when something seemed relevant to Earth's interests. Wright and Miller remained standing behind him, as was protocol for human diplomatic security. Eric noticed how other species representatives would glance at them, periodically with expressions ranging from curiosity to mild concern. During a brief recess, a small, fur-covered representative approached. According to Eric's briefing materials, this was Ambassador Kellery of the Rixian Federation, a relatively young species in the Council. First assembly is always overwhelming, Kellery said in a high musical voice. So many species, so many protocols. Indeed, Eric agreed. Though your people joined only 30 years ago, correct? How has the adjustment been? Kellery's fur rippled in what Eric guessed was their version of a shrug. Challenging, but rewarding. The trade benefits alone have advanced our technology by centuries. He paused, glancing at Wright and Miller. May I ask a personal question, Ambassador Russell? Of course. Your guards, they make some representatives nervous. The Vrock especially find their presence unsettling, not because they seem threatening, but because they don't understand their purpose. Eric had been briefed about the Vrock, a prey species with natural danger-sensing abilities. Please assure the Vrock representatives that my security team is here merely as a formality. Earth protocol requires their presence. Kellery's large eyes blinked slowly. But they carry no weapons. Our own guards at least carry stun devices. Sometimes, Eric said carefully, the lack of visible weapons can be more effective than their presence. The conversation was interrupted by the reconvening tone. As Kellery moved away, Eric caught Wright suppressing a small smile. What? He whispered. Nothing. Sir, she replied, just thinking that these aliens have no idea what humans are capable of with just their hands and training. Eric nodded slightly. That was precisely the point. Humanity had learned long ago that the most effective security often looked like no security at all. And if things went wrong, well, there was a reason Wright and Miller were selected for this mission, despite hundreds of qualified applicants. As the council session resumed, Eric settled back into his seat. First contact was going well, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the real test was yet to come. Sooner or later, the galaxy would discover exactly why human diplomats brought unarmed guards to negotiations. He just hoped it wouldn't be too soon. 3 weeks passed since humanity's introduction to the Galactic Council. Ambassador Eric Russell settled into a routine of meetings, cultural exchanges, and careful relationship building. Earth had already begun preliminary trade talks with 7 species and established cultural exchange programs with 3 others. The initial curiosity about the human diplomatic team had faded somewhat, though Eric still caught alien representatives studying Wright and Miller when they thought no one was watching. The human security officers had become something of an enigma to the council species. They carried no weapons, yet moved with an alertness that many predator species recognized and respected. "Ambassador Russell, your meeting with Representative Drow is in 10 minutes. Miller reminded him as they walked through the sweeping crystal corridors of the council building. "Thank you, Sam," Eric said, reviewing notes on his datapad. The Vandurian Confederation shared a border star system with newly established human colonies. Both sides claimed mining rights to an asteroid belt rich in rare minerals. Eric hoped to reach a compromise that would benefit both species. They arrived at a small meeting chamber reserved for private, diplomatic discussions. The room was simply furnished with a round table and chairs that adjusted to various body types. Large windows offered a view of Nexus, Prime's purple sky, and the 3 moons visible during daylight. Representative Drow was already waiting. A tall, slender being with iridescent scales and 4 arms, he rose to greet Eric with the formal Vandurian gesture palms outward, fingers splayed. "Ambassador Russell, I appreciate your punctuality," Drow said in the careful tones of someone speaking a non-native language. "The pleasure is mine, Representative," Eric replied, taking a seat across from Wright, and Miller assumed their usual positions against the walls, giving them clear views of both the door and windows. Their presence was so consistent that most diplomats now simply ignored them, considering them part of the human package. "I've reviewed your proposal for shared mining operations," Drow began, his upper arms manipulating a holographic display while his lower arms remained folded in his lap. "The profit distribution seems fair, but we have concerns about human mining techniques. Our scientists believe your methods may cause more debris than our own, potentially creating navigation hazards." Eric nodded. "We've anticipated those concerns. Our engineers have developed new containment fields specifically for this situation." He pulled up technical specifications on his datapad. "These would reduce debris by 80% compared to standard operations." Drow's inner eyelids flickered a sign of interest. "Impressive adaptation. Perhaps we could implement these fields in our own operations as well. I'm sure we could arrange a technology exchange as part of our agreement," Eric said, sensing progress. The meeting was going well. Too well, perhaps. The door slid open without a warning chime. Eric glanced up, expecting a council aide with refreshments. Instead, 4 reptilian beings charged into the room. Scales bristling with anger, they brandished ceremonial staffs that pulsed with energy. Eric recognized their species immediately: Krell, a warrior culture known for their opposition to council expansion, deaf to the expanding plague of humanity. The lead Krell shouted, raising his staff. Several things happened in the span of 3 seconds. Representative Drow froze in his chair, all 4 hands gripping the table edge. Eric barely moved, only shifting slightly to better see what was about to happen. Wright and Miller exploded into motion. The first Krell swung his staff at Eric's head. It never connected. Miller intercepted the attack, blocking the staff with his forearm. In one fluid motion, he gripped the weapon and used the Krell's momentum to slam him face first into the wall. The Krell collapsed, unconscious before he hit the floor. The second attacker lunged at Drow. Wright stepped between them, caught the staff with both hands, and twisted it sharply. The Krell howled as his wrist bones snapped. Wright followed with a precise strike to a nerve cluster in the Krell's neck. The attacker dropped like a stone. The third and fourth Krell attacked simultaneously. Miller ducked under a swing, then drove his fist into his attacker's midsection right, at the spot where Krell respiratory organs were vulnerable. The alien gasped and doubled over. Miller finished him with an elbow strike to the back of the head. Wright faced the final attacker. She sidestepped his wild swing, grabbed his arm, and used a joint lock to force him to his knees. With controlled pressure, she increased the hold until the Krell screamed in pain. unable to move without causing himself more agony. 12 seconds had passed since the door opened. Eric calmly tapped his communication device. Security breach. In meeting room 17, 4 intruders neutralized. Medical assistance required for the attackers. Representative Drow remained frozen, his scales pale with shock. How what just Eric straightened his tie. Now, about those containment fields. I believe we were discussing a technology exchange? Drow's mouth opened and closed without words. Council security officers burst into the room moments later, weapons drawn. They stopped short at the scene before them. 4 Krell warriors incapacitated on the floor. The human security officers back in their positions against the walls, looking only slightly more alert than usual. And Ambassador Russell, calmly discussing. Mining rights as if nothing had happened. The lead security officer, a burly Taurian, surveyed the room in disbelief. What happened here? A minor interruption, Eric said smoothly. Nothing to concern yourself with, though you might want to review your weapons detection systems. Those staffs should never have made it into the building. The security team began securing the Krell attackers. One of them checked the vital signs of the unconscious attackers. They're alive, but this one has 3 broken ribs, and this one has nerve damage. How did you defend yourselves? Eric glanced at Wright and Miller. My security team handled the situation. But they carry no weapons, the officer said, confusion evident. Correct, Eric confirmed. No weapons. Understanding dawned slowly on the officer's face. He looked at the human guards with new respect and perhaps a touch of fear. Representative Drow finally found his voice. They moved so fast, I didn't even see everything that happened. News of the incident would spread through the council within hours. Eric knew the questions would come next. Questions about human capabilities. About why Earth's diplomatic corps included people who could disable 4 armed attackers with nothing but their hands. For now, though, he simply smiled at Drow. I believe we were discussing profit-sharing arrangements? I think a 60-40 split would be fair, considering our contribution of containment field technology. Drow nodded numbly, still staring at Wright and Miller. The meeting continued, but something fundamental had changed. The galaxy had just received its first demonstration of why human diplomats brought unarmed guards to negotiations. And it wouldn't be the last. News of the incident spread through the Galactic Council like wildfire. By the next morning, every representative had seen the security footage. The video showed in precise detail how 2 unarmed humans had disabled 4 armed Krell warriors. In seconds, the recordings were analyzed, discussed, and shared across 1,000 worlds. Eric Russell was not surprised when he received a formal summons to appear before the High Chamber of the Council. This was an unusual honor for a representative of an observer species. Normally, only full members could address the 7 High Counselors who guided galactic policy. They want answers, Wright said as she and Miller escorted Eric through the grand hallways leading to the High Chamber. Security personnel from various species lined the route, watching the humans with new interest and respect. Of course they do, Eric replied. We knew this would happen eventually. Just not so soon. Will you tell them everything? Miller asked. Quietly. Eric shook his head slightly. Just enough. Earth Command was clear about information sharing protocols. The massive doors of the High Chamber slid open silently. Inside, the 7 High Counselors sat in a semicircle on elevated platforms. Each represented one of the founding species of the Galactic Council. Their diverse physiologies, from crystalline to tentacled to energy-based, all seemed to convey the same emotion, intense curiosity. Around the chamber's edges, observers from dozens of species watched. Eric spotted Representative Drow among them, along with senior diplomat Zorish, whose mandibles clicked rapidly in what Eric now recognized as excitement. Ambassador Eric Russell of Earth announced the chamber AI in multiple languages simultaneously. You may approach the center. Eric walked forward alone. Council protocol required that all attendees leave their security outside the high chamber. Wright and Miller waited just beyond the doors, a fact that clearly made some council security personnel nervous after seeing the footage. High Counselor Eleanor, a being with blue skin and flowing tentacles, spoke first. Her translated voice filled the chamber. Ambassador Russell, we have reviewed the security recordings of yesterday's incident. The Council wishes to understand the capabilities demonstrated by your security personnel. No weapons were detected, yet they disabled 4 armed attackers with remarkable efficiency. Eric bowed slightly. High Counselors, what you witnessed is called martial arts physical combat techniques, developed over thousands of years on Earth. Most human diplomatic security personnel are trained in multiple disciplines. But without weapons? Asked Counselor Vex, his crystalline form glimmering with confusion. How can this be effective against armed opponents? The human body is our first weapon, Eric explained. Throughout our history, we've developed ways to defend ourselves using only our bodies when weapons were unavailable or prohibited. This statement sent murmurs through the chamber. The concept seemed to disturb many of the observers. Ambassador, said Counselor Izek, an ancient being who appeared as a swirl of golden particles. Most species develop weapons technology to overcome physical limitations. Your species appears to have taken a different approach. Why? Eric considered his answer carefully. Necessity, Counselor. Human history is filled with conflicts. Sometimes weapons were banned, destroyed, or simply not available. We adapted. We learned to use what we always had with us: our bodies, our minds, our training. How widespread is this training among humans? Asked Counselor Krev, a reptilian being with scales similar to the Krell, but with a more refined appearance. It varies, Eric answered truthfully. Many humans learn basic self-defense. Some study martial arts as a cultural practice or sport. Military and security personnel receive more intensive training. High Counselor Elonar's tentacles rippled thoughtfully. The recordings show techniques that appear to target specific vulnerabilities in Krell physiology. Your guards knew exactly where to strike. Eric nodded. Part of diplomatic security training includes studying the biology of species we might encounter. It's a precaution, nothing more. A precaution, echoed Counselor Vex. Yet your guards disabled 4 armed warriors in 12 seconds without weapons. This raises concerns about human military capabilities. The chamber grew quiet. Eric understood the unspoken question. If unarmed humans could do this, what could armed humans do? Counselors, Eric said, his voice firm but respectful. Earth seeks peaceful relations with all council species. The abilities you witnessed were purely defensive, used only when directly threatened. We bring unarmed guards precisely to show our peaceful intentions. Counselor Izek's golden particles swirled faster. An interesting perspective, Ambassador. Some might see it differently. The humans are so dangerous, they don't need conventional weapons. Eric smiled diplomatically. I assure you we prefer dialogue to combat. What happened yesterday was an exception, not our preferred approach. Nevertheless, said High Counselor Eleanor, this demonstration of human capabilities has raised questions that must be addressed. The Council requests a formal demonstration of these martial arts. We wish to better understand human abilities. This was expected. Earth Command had prepared Eric for such a request. Of course, High Counselor. Earth would be happy to arrange a demonstration. With your permission, I would like to bring specialists from Earth who can properly showcase different Martial arts disciplines. Granted, Elonar said. The demonstration will take place in 1 week in the Grand Observation Arena. All council species will be invited to observe. Eric bowed again. Thank you, counselors. Earth appreciates your interest in our traditions. As Eric turned to leave, Counselor Izzik spoke once more. Ambassador Russell, one final question. The Krell attackers believed they had bypassed all security scans with their weapons. Yet your guards seemed prepared for the attack. How did they? No, Eric paused, choosing his words carefully. Counselor, human security personnel are trained to always expect the unexpected. They don't need to know an attack is coming. They simply remain ready for any possibility. This answer seemed to satisfy no one, but the council didn't press further. As Eric left the chamber, he could feel hundreds of alien eyes following him. The dynamic had shifted. Humanity was no longer viewed as just a young, ambitious species seeking its place in the galactic community. Now, they were something else. Something that could defend itself with nothing but flesh and bone against armed attackers. Something unpredictable. Outside the chamber, Wright and Miller fell into step beside him. How did it go? Wright asked quietly. A wanted demonstration, Eric replied. Time to call in the experts. Miller nodded. This changes things. They're going to see us differently now. That was inevitable, Eric said. Better they learn about our defensive capabilities now than our offensive ones later. As they walked through the council halls, Eric noticed alien representatives moving aside, giving them more space than before. Word had spread quickly. The unarmed humans were now considered dangerous. It was just the beginning of a new understanding between Earth and the galaxy. The Grand Observation Arena buzzed with excitement. Representatives from every council species packed the viewing areas. Some had traveled for days just to witness the human demonstration. Security was tight, with guards from multiple species, checking and rechecking everyone who entered. In the preparation area below the arena, Ambassador Eric Russell greeted the 4 martial arts experts who had arrived from Earth the previous day. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, Eric said, shaking hands with each of them. Alan Baker, a broad-shouldered man with a calm demeanor, nodded. Happy to help, Ambassador. Though I admit, demonstrating jiu-jitsu to aliens wasn't on my bucket list. Susan Harris, lean and focused, stretched her arms methodically. The Muay Thai community back home is already buzzing about this. First interstellar demonstration. Just remember, Eric cautioned, this isn't a competition or a real fight. It's about showing the principles and capabilities of each discipline clearly. Paul Carter, the Krav Maga expert, grinned. No problem. I'll try not to terrify them too much. And I'll keep it gentle, added Kate Wells, the Aikido master. Her small frame and soft voice contrasted with the others, but Eric knew she was possibly the most dangerous of the 4. Wright and Miller stood nearby, having briefed the newcomers on what to expect. Each expert would demonstrate their discipline against volunteer security personnel from various council species. It's time, announced a council aide, a small hovering robot with a translator unit. The 5 humans followed the aide through a corridor that led to the arena floor. The space was circular, about 30 meters across, with soft padding similar to earth mats, but made of some alien material. Surrounding the arena, rising in tiers, were thousands of observers from across the galaxy. High Counselor Elonar's voice echoed through the space. Welcome to this special demonstration requested by the Council. Ambassador Russell of Earth will now present human martial arts techniques. Eric stepped forward to a podium that adjusted to his height. Thank you, High Counselor. The Earth delegation is honored by your interest in our traditions. He gestured to the 4 experts standing behind him. These specialists have each mastered different martial arts, disciplines developed over centuries on Earth. They will demonstrate how humans have turned their bodies into effective defensive tools. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Eric continued. Throughout human history, we often faced situations where weapons were unavailable, banned, or impractical. We adapted by developing fighting systems that required only the human body and proper training. First, Alan Baker will demonstrate Jiu-Jitsu, a discipline focused on using leverage and technique to overcome superior strength. Alan stepped forward, dressed in a traditional GI. A large Kralosan security officer joined him on the mat. The Kralosan stood nearly 2 meters tall, with dense musculature that gave him at least twice Alan's strength. In Jiu-Jitsu, Eric explained, size and strength are less important than technique and leverage. Alan bowed to his opponent, who mimicked the gesture awkwardly. Then they began. The Kralosan moved to grab Alan, but the human slipped under his grasp, quickly positioning himself behind the larger alien. With smooth movements, Alan took the Kralosan to the ground and applied a simple joint lock. The alien struggled briefly before tapping the mat in submission, his expression showing surprise rather than pain. As you can see, Eric commented, Jiu-Jitsu allows a smaller opponent to control a larger one through precise technique. Next came Susan's demonstration of Muay Thai. Her opponent was a Tauric, a species with natural armor plates covering vital areas. Susan explained the basic strikes as she demonstrated them, showing how each targeted nerve clusters and weak points between the Tauric's armor. Muay Thai uses 8 points of contact, Eric narrated. Fists, elbows, knees, and feet. It developed as a battlefield martial art when weapons were lost or broken. Susan moved with controlled power, her strikes precisely aimed at the gaps in her opponent's natural protection. The Tauric security officer, initially confident in his armor, soon raised his hands in surrender, impressed by Susan's ability to find vulnerabilities no one had exploited before. Paul's demonstration of Krav Maga drew gasps from the audience. Facing 3 opponents simultaneously, a council security team, who had volunteered together, he showed the brutal efficiency of the Israeli combat system. Krav Maga was developed for real-world survival. Eric explained as Paul neutralized his attackers with quick, decisive movements. It focuses on ending threats as quickly as possible and handling multiple opponents. The arena fell silent as Paul disabled all 3 attackers in under 20 seconds. He helped them up afterward, the aliens looking both shaken and impressed. Final demonstration featured Kate and Aikido. Her opponent was a massive Melnarian, a species known for tremendous physical strength and aggressive temperament. Aikido is perhaps the most philosophical of human martial arts, Eric said. It uses an opponent's energy and momentum against them, requiring minimal force from the practitioner. The Melnarian charged at Kate, who seemed tiny in comparison. At the last moment, she pivoted slightly, redirecting the alien's considerable momentum. The Melnarian found himself flying through the air, landing hard on the mat, with Kate maintaining a perfect wrist lock that prevented him from rising. As you can see, Eric continued, Aikido transforms an attacker's energy into a disadvantage. The stronger the attack, the more effective the defense. Throughout the demonstrations, Eric provided context, explaining how these disciplines evolved. On Earth, due to constant conflict between human nations and the need to defend against both armed and unarmed opponents, the arena remained silent as the demonstrations concluded. The implications were clear to all present. Humans had developed unarmed combat into an art form that could rival technological weapons in certain situations. High Counselor Alonar floated down to the arena floor. Ambassador Russell, your species continues to surprise us. These demonstrations reveal much about human history and adaptability. Thank you, High Counselor, Eric replied. What you've seen today represents thousands of years of human development. Each discipline tells a story of how we've faced challenges throughout our history. A history filled with conflict, it seems, observed Counselor Thex, who had joined ELO NAR. Eric nodded. Yes, we don't hide that fact. Conflict shaped us, but so did the desire to protect ourselves and others without excessive force. Many humans study these arts not for combat, but for discipline, fitness, and cultural preservation. Nevertheless, Counselor Ezek's voice came from a hovering platform. The Council must reassess its understanding of human capabilities. Your unarmed combat skills exceed anything in our records. As the counselors discussed among themselves, Senior Diplomat, Zorish approached Eric. His mandibles clicked rapidly. Fascinating display, Ambassador, the insectoid said. I begin to understand why your guards carry no weapons. They need none. Eric smiled diplomatically. They carry no weapons because we come in peace, Senior Diplomat. The skills you saw today are defensive, not offensive. A distinction many species may find academic, Zorish replied. But I believe I understand the human approach better now. You bring guards without weapons to show restraint, yet maintain the ability to defend yourselves if necessary. Clever. As the arena began to empty, Eric knew that humanity's position within the Galactic Council had changed forever. The demonstration had achieved its purpose. The galaxy now understood that humans were not to be underestimated, even when they appeared unarmed. What they didn't yet understand was that what they had seen today was just the beginning of humanity's unique adaptations. 6 months passed since the martial arts demonstration. The position of humanity within the Galactic Council had transformed dramatically. Human diplomatic missions were now sought after by species across the galaxy, particularly those with security concerns. The knowledge that humans could defend themselves without weapons had created a new respect for Earth among many species. Ambassador Eric Russell stood at the viewport of the Earth Embassy, gazing at the purple sky of Nexus Prime. The embassy had been established just 2 weeks ago, a sign of humanity's growing importance. What had begun as observer status was rapidly accelerating toward full membership. Ambassador, the committee members have arrived, Wright said from the doorway. Eric turned from the view. Thank you, Lisa. Please show them to the conference room. The newly formed Human Affairs Committee was chaired by Senior Diplomat Zorish, who had become an unlikely advocate for humanity in council matters. The committee was tasked with integrating human perspectives and capabilities into the broader galactic community. Eric entered the conference room to find 6 representatives waiting. Zorash sat at the head of the table, his insectoid form somehow conveying an air of authority. Representatives from the Vandurian, Rixian, Tauric, Krolozan, and Melnarian species completed the group. Ambassador Russell, Zorish greeted him, mandibles clicking in what Eric now recognized as friendly respect. Thank you for hosting our committee meeting. The pleasure is mine, Eric replied, taking his seat. Miller and Wright stood at their usual positions along the wall, though now the aliens barely glanced at them. The presence of unarmed human guards had become accepted, even expected. We have much to discuss today, Zorish began. Your species continues to surprise us, Ambassador Russell. When humans first joined the Council as observers, many thought you would be just another minor addition to our community. Instead, you have changed how we think about security, defense, and adaptation. The Tauric representative, whose name was Grex, nodded his armored head. My government has requested human trainers to teach our security forces. The efficiency of your unarmed combat techniques would be valuable for situations where weapons are impractical. Several other species have made similar requests, Zorish added. The Council has never seen such interest in adopting another species' defensive methods. Eric smiled diplomatically. Earth is happy to share knowledge where appropriate. We've already begun establishing training exchanges with 5 Council species. The Melnarian representative A female named Vosa leaned forward. Her species was known for its direct approach. What I don't understand is why humans develop these skills to such an extent. Most species focus on technology for protection. You focused on your bodies. Why? It was a question Eric had answered many times over the past months, but he understood its importance. We had to adapt. Representative Vosa. Our history is filled with periods where weapons were banned, unavailable, or insufficient. Rather than accept vulnerability, we developed what we always had with us, our bodies and minds. Adaptation through necessity, Zorish said thoughtfully. My species evolved complex mandibles for similar reasons, but we stopped there. You humans continued to develop beyond natural evolution, creating hundreds of fighting systems. The Kralozan representative rumbled in his deep voice. The council assumed technological achievement was the only significant path to advancement. Your species showed us a different path. Eric nodded. Every species finds its own way forward. Zorish clicked his mandibles in what Eric now knew was amusement. Indeed, and that brings us to our primary agenda item today. He activated a holographic display in the center of the table. The Council has updated its security protocols. All diplomatic personnel must now be scanned not just for weapons, but for combat training. The display showed new classification. Categories. Eric noted with interest that unarmed human guard was now classified as a Class 3 security asset, placing them in the same category as certain defensive technologies. Additionally, Zorish continued, I am pleased to inform you that the High Council has voted to accelerate Earth's status from observer to provisional member years ahead of the normal schedule. Murmurs of agreement came from around the table. Eric maintained his diplomatic composure, but inside he felt a surge of pride. This was a major victory for humanity. The vote was nearly unanimous, the Rixian representative added. Only the Krell abstained, for obvious reasons. Earth is honored by the Council's decision, Eric said. We look forward to deeper cooperation with all species. There is one more matter, Zorish said, his tone becoming more serious. Some Council members have raised concerns about other potential human capabilities. If your unarmed combat skills are so advanced, what other adaptations might humans have developed that we don't yet understand? Eric chose his words carefully. As with any species, humans have many adaptations and skills. We're happy to share knowledge about ourselves as our relationship with the Council deepens. It was a diplomatic non-answer, and Zorish knew it. The insectoid's compound eyes studied Eric for a moment before he clicked his mandibles softly. Of course, Ambassador. Trust builds over time. The meeting concluded an hour later with plans for expanded human involvement in Council affairs. As the committee members left, Zorish lingered behind. A private word, Ambassador? He asked. Eric nodded, and they moved to the viewport overlooking the cityscape. Your species has impressed many, including myself, Zorish said. When you first arrived with unarmed guards, I thought it was naive or perhaps arrogant. Now I understand. It was neither. It was confidence. We try to be prepared, Senior Diplomat. Zorish's mandibles clicked softly. Yes, and I suspect your martial arts are just the beginning of human adaptations that might surprise us. Eric smiled but said nothing. The Council values honesty, Ambassador Russell. When you are ready to share more about humanity's unique traits, many would be interested to learn. In time, Senior Diplomat, some revelations are best introduced gradually. After Zorish departed, Eric returned to his office where Wright and Miller waited. Provisional membership, Miller said. That's huge, sir. It is, Eric agreed. Earth Command will be pleased. Should we have told them about our other adaptations? Wright asked. Our problem-solving approaches, our psychological resilience, our adaptive immune systems? Eric shook his head. one revelation at a time. Let them adjust to the idea that sometimes the most dangerous weapon in the room isn't the one you can scan for. As Eric prepared his report to Earth Command, he reflected on how far humanity had come in 6 short months. From cautious observers to provisional members, all because the galaxy had discovered why human diplomats brought unarmed guards to negotiations. They had learned that humans were dangerous, not because of their technology, but because of what? They were adaptable, resourceful, and prepared for anything. The unarmed guards had been a statement all along. Humans didn't need weapons to be formidable. It was just the first of many lessons humanity would teach the stars.